There's a succulent in South Africa that hunters chewed before long treks through the desert, to numb hunger, kill pain, and calm their minds before the hunt. There's a lichen, not even a plant technically, that grows on tree bark and was used for centuries to fight infection long before antibiotics existed. And there's a root in the Rocky Mountains so effective at treating respiratory illness that it's now harder to find in the wild than the diseases it treats. These aren't the plants you see in the wellness aisle. No echinacea, no chamomile, no ginseng. Today we're going into the back catalogue, 10 plants with centuries of traditional use behind them, real chemistry backing some of their reputations, and stories almost nobody knows. Let's start in South Africa. 1. Sceletium. Canna. Sceletium tortuosum. Growing low to the ground here is an unassuming succulent with small yellow flowers. The Khoisan people, some of the oldest continuous cultures on Earth, called it canna or kugode, meaning something to chew. The name of the plant itself, Sceletium, comes from the Latin word for skeleton, because as the leaves dry, the veins stand out starkly, giving them a bony skeletal look. Traditionally, the plant was harvested, crushed, packed into a bag, and left to ferment, a process that transforms its chemistry entirely. Once dried, it was chewed, smoked, or brewed as tea. Hunters used it before treks to suppress hunger and thirst. Herders reportedly washed their tired legs with it after long days, and it played a role in spiritual and ceremonial life for the Khoisan for what may be thousands of years. Here's where it gets interesting scientifically. Canna contains alkaloids, mainly mesembrine and mesembrinone, that appear to act on serotonin pathways in the brain, similar in mechanism to modern antidepressants. Modern standardized extracts have been studied in small clinical trials for mood, stress, and anxiety, and some South African psychiatrists have reportedly used it clinically alongside, or instead of, conventional treatment. The caution here, because of how it interacts with serotonin, it should never be combined with SSRIs, MAOIs, or other psychiatric medications. This is a plant with real pharmacological activity, not a gentle chamomile-style herb. 2. Dragon's blood, Croton lechleri and related species. Deep in the Amazon rainforest, if you cut into the bark of certain croton trees, something startling happens. A thick blood-red resin oozes out, almost like the tree is bleeding. Indigenous communities across the Amazon basin have used this resin for generations as an immediate wound treatment. Applied directly to a cut, it dries into a natural seal, functioning almost like liquid stitches. It's also been used in small internal doses for digestive complaints and inflammation. There's a nearly identical story on the other side of the world. In parts of Asia, a different dragon's blood resin is harvested from Daemonops rattan palms, used historically in traditional medicine and as a dye and varnish. Modern interest in croton-based dragon's blood centers on its proanthocyanidin content, plant compounds associated with wound healing and antioxidant activity, which has actually made it a subject of legitimate pharmaceutical research into topical healing agents. 3. Osha Root, Ligusticum porteri. High in the Rocky Mountains, above 9,000 feet, grows a plant with a gnarled, aromatic root, pungent, almost celery-like when broken open. Indigenous peoples of the American Southwest, including the Navajo and other southwestern nations, have used Osha for generations as one of their primary respiratory remedies. For coughs, sore throats, colds, and chest congestion. There's a colorful piece of folklore attached to it too. It's sometimes called bear root, because black bears have been observed digging it up and chewing it, reportedly after emerging from hibernation or when injured. Here's the catch, and it's a serious one. Osha closely resembles poison hemlock and water hemlock in the wild, two of the most toxic plants in North America. Misidentification has caused fatalities. On top of that, Osha is slow-growing, doesn't transplant or cultivate easily, and wild populations are under real pressure from over-harvesting. This is not a forage-it-yourself plant. If it's going into your video, it deserves a clear warning. Sourced from a reputable supplier only, never wild harvested by anyone without expert identification skills. 4. Boneset, Eupatorium perfoliatum. Boneset grows in wetlands and low-lying areas across eastern North America, easily identified by leaves that appear to be pierced straight through by the stem. In 19th century America, before modern pharmaceuticals, this was one of the most widely stocked herbs in any household's medicine cabinet. The name itself is a piece of medical history. Breakbone fever was an old folk term for illnesses, like dengue or severe influenza, that cause deep, aching bone and joint pain. Boneset was the go-to remedy, brewed as an intensely bitter tea, taken hot to induce sweating and break a fever. It fell out of common use as modern medicine advanced, but it remains a striking example of how differently earlier generations approached something as ordinary as the flu. 5. USNEA, Old Man's Beard, Usnea species. Technically, this one's a cheat. Usnea isn't a plant at all. It's a lichen, a partnership between a fungus and an algae, growing as pale, hair-like tufts hanging from tree branches in forests around the world. But herbalists have grouped it with medicinal plants for so long that it belongs on this list. Usnea's claim to fame is usnic acid, a compound with documented antimicrobial activity, active against certain bacteria and fungi. Long before antibiotics, cultures across Europe, Asia, and North America used USNEA topically for wounds and skin infections, and internally for respiratory and urinary complaints. There's also a quiet environmental story here. Usnea is extremely sensitive to air pollution and won't grow in polluted areas, which is why foragers sometimes use its presence as an indicator of clean air. Nalis. Bistort grows across the meadows of Europe, identifiable by its twisted, knotted root, which is exactly where the name comes from, bistorta, Latin for twice twisted. That root is packed with tannins, giving it a strongly astringent quality. Traditionally, it was used as a gargle for sore throats, a wash for wounds, and a remedy for digestive upset. Anywhere a tightening, drying effect on tissue was useful. In parts of northern England, the young leaves were even eaten as a spring vegetable in a dish called dock pudding, one of the few plants on this list that's both medicine and food. 7. Crampbark, Viburnum opulus. Sometimes a plant's name just tells you exactly what it does. Crampbark is the bark of the European Gelder rose, and for generations it's been the go-to folk remedy for exactly what it sounds like: muscle cramps, menstrual cramps, and other smooth muscle spasms. It was a staple in 19th and early 20th century Western herbal medicine, particularly for women's health, often prepared as a decoction, simmered rather than steeped, to draw the compounds out of the tough, fibrous bark. 8. Self-heal, Prunella vulgaris. This might be the most overlooked plant on the entire list, because there's a good chance it's growing in your own backyard right now. Self-heal is a small, low-growing plant with purple flower spikes. Common in lawns, meadows, and roadsides across much of the world. Most people mow right over it without a second thought. But its name reflects centuries of reputation as a wound-healing herb, applied topically to cuts and used internally as a soothing remedy for sore throats and mild inflammation. It's a plant that's hiding in plain sight, which makes it one of the most satisfying hidden gem stories to tell. 9. Pau d'Arco, Handroanthus impetiginosus. In the South American rainforest, a tree with brilliant pink-purple flowers towers over the canopy, and beneath its outer bark lies the part that's prized medicinally. The inner bark, harvested by indigenous communities for generations as a remedy for infections, skin conditions, and general immune support. What's made Pau d'Arco genuinely interesting to modern researchers is a compound called lapachol, along with related naphthoquinones, chemicals that have drawn attention in antimicrobial and even early cancer research. But this cuts both ways. Those same compounds mean Pau d'Arco can be toxic at high doses, and it's not a more is better herb. This is one where responsible dosing matters. 10. Motherwort, Leonurus cardiaca. Motherwort is a member of the mint family, and it shows up independently in two very different traditional medicine systems: European herbalism and traditional Chinese medicine, which is often a sign that a plant's effects are real enough to be discovered twice. The name comes from its historical association with women's health, especially the postpartum period and menstrual complaints. But its other traditional use is just as interesting. It's long been reached for to ease heart palpitations, linked to anxiety and nervous tension. A plant aimed squarely at the connection between an anxious mind and a racing heart. 10 plants, a South African desert succulent, a bleeding Amazonian tree, a mountain root that looks like poison, a lichen that only grows where the air is clean, and a weed most of us have walked past 1,000 times without knowing its name. None of this is medical advice. Several of these plants carry real risks, drug interactions or toxic lookalikes, and that's part of what makes them worth respecting rather than just romanticizing. But that's also what makes this list different from the usual turmeric and ginger content. These are plants with genuine stories, genuine chemistry, and centuries of human attention behind them. If you want a deep dive on any one of these, full history, active compounds, or the research, let me know in the comments and I'll cover it next.